Hi everybody, it's Sally here, and I'm back on the last video of my LK150 series 2 on the subject of hems and edgings. And in this video we're going to have a look at some fancy edgings, as I call them. These are the kind of thing where you might have to knit a little strip of something first, act as your foundation for your cast on, or you can knit braids and stuff up to sew and attach on afterwards. A little bit more work involved in most of these, but you know, the results can be worth it. It's up to you, depends how much time and effort you want to put into making your garment a one of a kind. So there's not going to be an awful lot of demoing on here, just a couple of things, but I want to give you some names and some inspiration, I hope, to go and have a little dig around and find out some stuff for yourselves. There's an awful lot of info out there on the internet, on YouTube, on Facebook, you name it. We go and put a search in for something and, you know, thousands of answers will come up at you. So the couple of things I was going to have a look at today, first one is going to be this braid. This is something that's knitted separately and attached afterwards by stitching. On this machine and the chunky machine, they can look a bit bulky, so you need to, as I said before, practice it, have a look and see what you think. Again, if you have more than one knitting machine, you might find that you could use your standard, or if you have one, a fine gauge machine, to produce a slightly less bulky braid and then apply that to a garment made on the mid or the chunky machine. This braid has been around for donkey's years. I know Diana Sullivan has demoed it and includes it as part of her Afghans pattern book. I think Afghan shawls and Afghans, is it called? And also her best baby blankets, I think, has it in there. She is an excellent resource for things like edgings and trimmings. So, and her pattern booklets aren't very expensive, and you get an awful lot of information in there, well worth the money. So as well as the free stuff she puts up on YouTube. So we'll have a look at how that is made. When I've seen this in old knitting magazines going back, well back into at least the 1980s. And then stuff like this, the little pointed like flag-shaped things at the bottom. This piece across here is a separate strip, and then you hook that onto the knitting machine and pick up stitches from it, and then just carry on knitting. Needs a good block and a steam and or press to get it to sit nice and flat, but that is a nice one. Now oh, I was going to say about this braid, as well as the fold over braid, I've done an example where the braid is on one side of the knitting, and I've followed the same method for this to make an eyelet row along here. And then this is picked up onto the knitting machine, and it's becomes your foundation row for carrying on with the stocking stitch. Oops, it's got that hooked on there. These T-pins are all right, but they've got little hooks on them, tend to get caught in your knitting. Right, let's put that out of the way. Yes, coming back to this one. Unfortunately, I can't show you how to make this. This is because it comes out of a book, and so therefore it's subject to copyright. But the book in question is by this lady. Some of you might know her, Mary Ann. I never know whether it's Oga or Oja. Excuse me. I think she's Canadian, and she has produced over the years a fantastic range of booklets with all sorts of knitting tips and hints and helpful info. And 3 of these booklets of hers are just all about bands, edgings and finishings. So I don't know which one. I think the green one, the 50 Ways to Love Your Knitter, might have been the first book. And then Knitting on the Edge is the second one. And then she did a third one, Band Practice. And inside one of these, there's a list of a lot of the publications that she's done. She's got one mid-gauge magic, the next best thing, which is a fantastic selection of different neckband treatments. The AB, I guess over on the other side of the pond you'd call that ABZ book, alter it, button it, zip it, 24 buttonhole techniques. There's some fantastic ideas in there. Tricks of the trade. So she's produced an awful lot. Now these 3 band edging books, and there's just about everything in here that you could ever want to do on your knitting machine. And here is this triangular edging. So I suggest, if you want to have an experiment on different edgings, I hope you can hear me over that aeroplane. I live about 3 miles from an airport and a couple of miles from the air ambulance station, so which is obviously helicopters. Not the busiest airport in the world, but nevertheless we do occasionally get aircraft go over, and I have to have the window open today because it's hot. So here we go. Yes, what was I talking about? Yeah, these books on bands and edgings. So there's 40 single bed techniques, but there's also double bed things in there if you've got a ribber on one or other of your machines. Same with this one, 29 single bed, 21 double bed, 26 single bed, 24 double bed. But even if you only have a single bed machine, there's plenty in there to give you some food for thought. Now her website is, I had it here a minute ago. Must be in this one. Yes. knitwords.com. And now the booklets might not necessarily still be available in printed form, as some of them go back 15-20 years, but I'm pretty sure they are all available as PDFs. I had to get the next best thing as a PDF, but that's fine. I printed it off on my printer at home, and a good quality reproduction. So yeah, she's also done a book on hand knitting techniques, which is really very specifically aimed at this machine, and again lots of help and useful information in there. If you just stick her name in the search engine search bar in Amazon, it should come up. So but what I will do is I'll show you how to knit the braid and then the braided edging. As this, I find this is a really useful thing. In Machine Knitting Beginners and Returners Circle on Facebook group, I did a knit along project to make a sleeveless, well, I don't know, we call it a gilet or a waistcoat, but it's like a cardigan without sleeves and no buttons up the front. So vest, slipper, I don't know what you call it. All different names around the world, but I call it a gilet or a waistcoat. And that had this braided edging all the way around it. Now, my tip for working out how much of it you need to make is to knit a little sample piece of it. You can't really do a tension square, so knit a little sample piece of it, either 50 or 100 rows long, and cast it off, and then leave it a good length of time to relax, at least 24 hours, because being tuck, it will shrink back into shape from having been stretched on the machine. And you don't want to measure it too early, otherwise when you stitch it around your garment and that then starts to shrink and pull in, it'll pucker up all your work and you'll have to take it off and redo it. So yeah, knit a little sample piece, either 50 or 100 rows long, and when that's ready you can then measure it, and from that you can then work out how many rows you need to knit to go around your garment. You might sometimes find that it's like 2,000 rows. Don't be surprised, because if you can, try to knit the required lengths in single pieces wherever possible. So yeah, if you've got an open front gilet or waistcoat like I did, I think that all the way around the front, the neck, along the bottoms and along the bottom of the back was all one piece, and then 2 separate pieces for the armholes and another 2 separate little pieces for the pocket tops. Great thing for pocket tops, this, really good. yes, what was I saying? Yes, so knit your little sample piece and then use that to make your measurements. So again, you can do this on any machine. So pull forward 10 stitches. Now I've made myself a teeny little cast on rag for doing these, because you really need to get weight on these ASAP. And so if you've got just a few stitches and an E-wrap cast on, there's nothing to stick your weights into. And the cast on rag is really handy because it provides that area to hang weights. And a little, this has just got 20 loops on the side, so it's great for your little braids and bands. So and because I've only just made it, it's still quite curly. Excuse me. Just change position. And so use your cast on rag. Make sure you've got just one needle through each loop. And put a couple of weights on. So you want, I think it's 10 stitches. Put that into work. Yes, it is 10 stitches for the braid, and then I need to be on the other side to knit my ravel cord row. Ravel cord. There we go. Just checking to make sure you can see what I'm doing. Move you back a bit. That's a bit better. And then I'll change over to some pink yarn. These braids aren't tricky to do. It's just that there's obviously a lot of rows, so it's pretty repetitive. And the other thing I would suggest is when you're making, if you're making very long pieces to go around hems and edges of a garment, is at some point where you knit 2 stocking stitch rows, then take it off on waste yarn when you think you've got to about the right length, and then pin it round and check it. And then if you've got too much, then you can obviously unravel a bit, or if you haven't got enough, you can just pick up from the waste yarn, put it back on the machine and knit a few more repeats of the braid. So you're going to E-wrap cast on 10 stitches. And knit 2 rows. There we go. So now reset your row counter to 0. Put the rustle levers back on 1, and count 2 stitches in from the edge on both sides, and put that needle out to hold position. So 2, 1 out to hold, then 2, 4, 1 out to hold, and then 2. And you're going to knit 4 rows. Make sure that machine is set to hold. Leave it on main tension, should be okay. Now just push those 2 needles back to upper working position and knit 2 rows. Put the same 2 needles out to hold, knit 4 rows. Push them back to upper working position, knit 2, and repeat. And then after a while you can move your weights up or weight, you might only need one. So this is basically a 6-row repeat. So 4 rows with the needles out on tuck. Push them back and knit 2 rows. And so you just continue until your braid is the required length. Now, I would normally cast this off, but to save time, I won't. I will just cut it. And then remove your cast on rag. And there you'll see your little tuck stitch braid. Now, obviously, to attach it to the edge of garment, you're going to need to fold this in half. And let me see if I can find the edge of something. And then you'll get the edge of whatever it is you want to apply your braid to, and pin it in place. So at about half the depth of the braid is on the top, on the back, and half on the front. And so you'll pin that all the way along. And as I said, you need to give this a good period of time to relax. This is still looking a bit stretched out. But ultimately, you'll have a great braid. And the other good thing about this is it's very flexible about going round corners, so it's a real goodie to go around the edge of blankets. I know Diana used it on her baby blanket, one of her baby blankets, where she'd done a tuck stitch repeat, and she'd just, I think, changed colours probably every 4 or 6 rows on a tuck stitch pattern, and she had 7 or 8 colours on there, so it was an awful lot of ends because she was just tying them off. But the beauty of it, we're doing it with this little braided thing, is that you can tuck all the ends inside the braid when you're attaching it, comme ça, like that, and hide them all away. You don't have to laboriously sew in hundreds of ends. So that's the fold over version of that braid. And now I'll show you the version which I've got on my pinboard, which is using it as an edging. I don't think it's as nice as the triangular one, but it does still provide a little bit of a different edge, if that's what you want. So this time we're going to have 8 needles in work. So I'm just trying to find my... I've got so many bits of samples of knitting sitting on the floor all around me. Yes, I want 8 stitches this time, so pick up 8 loops on your cast on rag. You can of course use waste yarn if you haven't got a cast on rag. Just knit a few rows of waste yarn, 1 row of ravel to separate, and then E-wrap cast on your main yarn. Right. So they're pulled. Oh no, I haven't done the ravel cord. Oh dear, I'd have lost my brand new cast on rag. Ravel cord. Oops, it's because my carriage is set to hold and my needles are in D. To do that. There we go. Pull out to D and E-wrap cast on. Hello, doggy. My little dog's just come to see me. Hello, purse. You alright? Somebody making a horrid noise outside. Oh dear. Never mind. So I've nearly finished. There we go. So E-wrap cast on, pull the ravel cord, the end stitches in nice and tight. Again, you can leave it on main tension, although this braid, when used as a flat edge, might have a tendency to pull in. So you might want to consider maybe turning the tension up one number. So I might do that on this one. Why not? Right. So knit 2 rows. There we go. So again, we'll set the carriage to hold and count in 2 needles from the right and put that one out to holding position. Now the other thing you need to remember to do with this one, every time your carriage is on the right, you're going to make an eyelet on the left hand side. So take the 3rd needle in from the left and put it on the 4th one, put the empty needle back into work. So I'm going to reset my row counter to 0, knit 2 rows, make eyelet, empty needle back into work, knit 2 rows, make eyelet, empty needle back into work, and then on this 5th row that needle goes back to C. So the needle that had been in holding position, just push it back to C, knit 2 rows, put this needle back out to hold, make eyelet, knit 2 rows, oops, make eyelet, knit 2 rows, make eyelet, push that back to C, knit 2 rows, make eyelet, put that back out to D, move weights up, or weight, knit 2 rows, make eyelet, knit 2 rows, make eyelet, and it's fairly easy to see when you need to push this one back to D, because you'll have 4 loops of thread going over the top of that needle. Push it back to C, knit 2 rows, and repeat. We'll do another repeat. And again, if you're not too sure how long you need this piece to be, I would, as I suggested for the first one, knit a little sample. It's maybe 50 or 100 rows long, something that you can use as a multiplier easily, and then calculate it from there. And like with the other one, if you're not too sure you've got the length right, after you've done two rows where you're knitting the tuck stitch back, take it off on waste yarn, check it and see if it's the right length. If not, then you can put it back on the machine. If you want to pull back, I would put it back on the machine and pull back on the machine. Don't try and unravel it because of these eyelet holes. You'll get in a bit of a mess. Okay, so likewise with the last one, I would normally cast it off at this point, but to save time, I will just drop it off. Remove the ravel and the cast on rag, and here is your little tuck stitch edging. Now, to use this as an edge for a garment, you turn it around so the wrong side is facing you, get a 2-prong transfer tool. I'll start a little bit away from the loose end and just pick up along the top edge. So make sure you're going through a whole stitch each time, so you've got one whole stitch on each prong of that tool, and pick it up. Now remember, when you're picking up stitches which are now going to become edges of rows that it's not one stitch to one row. The ratio on your tension of rows to stitches to rows is not one stitch to one row. So make sure you're not hanging the side of every stitch onto a needle, otherwise it'll pucker up. And as I said, you know, you need to work out how much how long a piece you need to go across the bottom of your garment. You know, if you're knitting a 40-inch chest or bust top, the front and the back are each going to be 20 inches wide, so you want a 20-inch length of this braided edge to make your edging. So wrong side facing, pick them stitches up and hang a weight or 2 or 3 and then thread up. Now if you altered the tension away from main tension, remember to put it back. Put your Russell levers back on 2, reset row counter, and then you can commence knitting. I've just got a teeny bit of this ball of wool left. That will do for the purpose of a sample. And there you can see braided edging turned into edge of a knitted piece. It's something a little bit different. Oh, it never ceases to amaze me how versatile these machines are. Even the most basic one like this that's got no fancy patterning or ribbon or anything like that, you can still produce the most amazing stuff with a little bit of ingenuity and a little bit of time. So I hope this series on hems and edgings has been helpful to you, particularly if you're fairly new on your journey on the knitting machine, or even if you're not, maybe I've shown you something you didn't know before. If you have any questions, please go through either the Facebook group or comment on YouTube. The whole series will be in the Machine Knitting Beginners and Returners Circle, and I will be able to put up any additional information in there in the form of documents and pictures, which I cannot do on YouTube. So, happy knitting, everybody. Enjoy your machine.